Welcome, everyone. Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I want to continue my talks on the 10th force, which is a very important understanding of how the universe works with this some sort of intelligence factors that control things. I think it's irrefutable. Things just fitting together as your boobalicious common physicists want to talk about. It's all about randomness, and the randomness, of course, doesn't produce something eventually. If you get a billion monkeys pounding on typewriters, eventually you will get Shakespeare's play, sonatas, whatever you want to call it. So you'll produce it. I think this kind of thinking is the height of stupidity. And quite frankly, I don't know if that really is possible unless you go into numbers that are so unfathomable that it is. So if you get enough people typing on a typewriter, you eventually get then you'll get the next word after that, and of course, statistical database. But statistical database is inferior and ridiculous. So we're never going to get a trillion, billion, quadrillion monkeys pounding on typewriters. There isn't even that many typewriters out there. Keyboards, whatever it may be. So the whole idea is it makes illogical sense, which is all part of common illogical science, because it's very illogical. It's steeped in mysticism of its own. It's the religion of science, which is so corrupt and rotten that they should have a church of science next to the other ridiculous churches. So when we talk about that, we have to understand that there is these forces out there, which again are kind of mysterious, but science doesn't want to buy into mystery. They want to make up numbers. Well, as Newton did, well, to understand my equations, we have to use my arithmetic. After all, I created it. How nice. You explain your own goofball thoughts with your own goofball math. Isn't that fascinating? So, it's as silly as, again, going back to religion, of these ridiculous books that make statements that you can mean anything. But of course, you have to get that from your pastor to explain it to you, because you're too stupid to talk to God yourself. So one thing we have to understand is the major law of the 10th force is that you cannot create something that will make your situation worse than it was to begin with. So this is very important to understand. So if you're trying to create something that you believe is good for you, but ultimately the forces to be, the energies around you, know that this is in conflict with your well-being in the future, it will not happen. So this is something that I've been studying for many, many years, because I'm the only expert in this field to begin with. Nobody has worked with this kind of technology as long as I have, in business in particular. So I know what people try to do. I talk to many, many people, work in their lives, etc., find out what is going on, what they desire and not. And of course, a lot of things that people try and manifest and other things don't have a lot of the important laws of manifesting to it. And these laws are many. The 10th force controls all these. And I've laid this out. How can you manifest? Do you have channels for it to come to you? Well, no, I want it. I want $1 million. And I don't care who you are. Maybe, people like this to quote, minimum wage workers and say how ridiculous that is. But it doesn't have to be. You could be an executive making $100,000 a year. I want $1 million. Well, how's it going to come to you? I'm going to find it in the back of the office in a shoebox which says Little Orphan Annie on it. That's how it's going to come to me. Well, delusional man, you're wrong. It's not going to come to you that way. That's not a channel. So you have to have channels for it to come to you. Where's it going to come to you? And this is where it comes down to with most people, which is why people fall back into gambling, is that the only way really that you can create a channel for something to come to you without working on it is the fact that you get it with gambling, because that's what gambling is all about. It's really getting something for nothing, because you're working in the odds. But, somebody wins, but of course, more people lose than win, and that way you giving the prize away make a lot more money. That's the catch to all that. So that's what a lot of people look for. And of course, a lot of people may only have that option, but that's not entirely true, as I will get into as well. But We do have to understand that as a principle. So these gambling options, and there are professional gamblers who have done quite well. And we all want to look at gamblers who have not done well, and it's probably more people who have gambled who have lost than those that win. But there are professional gamblers that actually make a lot of money and do it consistently. They also lose a lot of money. But at the end of the day or the end of the year, as is really a measuring stick, what happens is the fact that they have won more than they've lost. And it's not because you go in a bad streak. It's not even if you go in a winning streak. At the end of the year, what does it add up to? How many wins and losses did you get? And what does that totally add up to? That's what professional gamblers do. And there are some people that are successful at this. I would tend to think a very tiny number are. But there are a lot of people that claim that they are constantly winning and constantly doing this and that. I don't really know in the bigger picture. I followed this to a degree with poker players and other ones. And of course, some people have made a fortune. Other people have lost a fortune. And of course, you don't see a lot of the same people sticking around. They're hot for a year or two and then they disappear because they keep losing. And this is a problem. And almost every big winner goes into a big losing streak as well. So let's keep that in mind. But that's another issue of gambling, which is fascinating, and how do you empower that, etc. But you can make yourself luckier. That's part of the 10th force reality. But the bottom line is that you can't manifest something that's going to make things worse than the problem you're trying to solve. So, and of course, this is why people oftentimes things fail when it comes to particularly relationships. People want bad people. They want to bring bad people in their life because they are stuck on them. I see this consistently. If you have to try too hard to bring someone in your life, it's a big mistake to begin with. They're either going to embrace you as a fellow partner or they're not. And if they're not, then it's a wrong choice. And that's going to add up to all sorts of problems in the future. Particularly your broken heart, the potential of having children who are then have to live through a horrible relationship, and it can go on and on and on, ultimately leading to the point where you're not going to be in that relationship anyway, and you're going to have to seek a better partner. Why not do that from the beginning? Don't expect the 10th force to empower you in something that is negative for you. So, everybody tries to push this because you think you know better than your higher self, the higher consciousness, the 10th force out there that creates everything. You think you know better because it's your life. That may not be the case. So some things you have to look at to say, well, it's not working out because it shouldn't work out. And that, of course, it's going to make things worse than better. So do keep that in mind. That's a critical aspect of how the 10th force works. So you have to understand that you push things just so long. If something doesn't work, it's not meant to work, and you have to then try a different way. And this is particularly true with certain things. If you're running into a lot of problems with whatever it may be, particularly relationships, maybe it's even starting a business and you keep getting stopped for one reason or another, well, probably that's not the best thing to get into. That doesn't mean you give up on relationships or business, but maybe you should try something else that works better for you. I usually find things in life click one thing after another. It either works relatively smoothly or it isn't meant to be. So making it meant to be, pushing it, which is a stubborn way of doing things, generally results in disaster, not in success. And even if you are successful, you're setting yourself up for a greater disaster in the future. So it's very important to understand that aspect of the 10th force, the 10th force, which filters what comes to you. So you're not in control of everything. Now, the bottom line is that there may be negative entities that people tap into that they use as their 10th force for some degree, and they produce very negative results. Meaning the fact is that, yes, negative things happen in the reality of the world. And why is this? Oh, that's another long discussion, but the whole idea is that there are good and bad forces that control things as well. But generally in your life, you're tapped into a particular force. I have to look at ultimately the world, and while the world is a pretty messed up, evil place, and always has been. We really, the prospering countries and so forth in general, are those countries that have adopted some sort of what we consider better way of life. They are the pseudo democracies, the socialistic economies. None of the great fascists, the great dictators, have done anything. Going back to, of course, we can go back to World War II and Mussolini and Hitler. These people did not win. We can go back before that. Ultimately, the Genghis Khan didn't win, Attila Hun didn't win. Eventually, all these empires, after doing great destruction, were basically collapsed. And when empires became decadent, there were problems and they collapsed. So we have to understand that there seems to be some sort of positive guiding force out there in the bigger picture. You can call this karma or whatever you want. And, a lot of karma doesn't come right back to people in that particular time and place. But the energy that's out there generally that goes around comes around, as the old saying goes. So when you look at the bigger picture, the way things have manifest and tend to manifest is in a surprisingly balanced nature. So the people who were in the biggest place to conquer the world, which was the Soviet Union, really didn't expand whatsoever. They had properties after World War II, countries they occupied, etc., that they took away from dominating Nazis, and they occupied those countries, for better or for worse. In general, most of the time, it was better than those countries could put together. But certainly that didn't grow anywhere. The Soviet Union never grew. It automatically shrunk yet again. So here we go again. That who is causing this? So certainly these groups and negative people, if you want to call that negative, did not expand. They decreased, as all of these things. And we see how corrupt systems like what's happening in China today are collapsing. The whole thing is collapsing, as is all the corrupt empires that we have, which is pretty much the entire world now. So they collapse horribly. So there is some sort of force behind things that is guiding it. It may not be strong enough out there to counter a lot of the negativity out there, but it's not necessarily the 10th force problem. It's actually the problem with a society that supports criminal and corruption, and that's exactly what we have. We can point to certain leaders, but it's the individual person. It's your neighbor who is the scumbucket, who is making sure the bad guys stay in power. It's as simple as that, and we should not complicate it to get past it. They are the ones that empower the others to implement the horrific policies and their criminal activity that all the world is involved in, which is shockingly corrupt. Not even to a level that you could possibly understood. And if I was able to tell you these things, you would think I was insane. But I know from firsthand experience. So we have to understand that. And that's one of the major rules that everyone needs to embrace. And the embracing of things is that you're not going to manifest something, no matter how much you want it, that is going to be counter to really what you need. And as he said, this is so typical in relationships, but it's also typical in a lot of things because you can't see the bigger picture. You have tunnel vision on, oh, this is the greatest business out there. This is, there's no competition, etc. And you're all wrong on all of these cases. So when you try and manifest that, in general, because it's a bad idea, it won't work right, but you're not going to be able to manifest that, and you're not going to be able to push it through because you're positive thinking and you got a lot of money to push it. Well, generally that doesn't matter. Money has not solved all problems with particularly businesses. If they're not successful, that's because there is no market there, and multi-million-dollar corporations have invested in new products that don't work, and there's a long list of these that have failed. So all of these things are looked into and has to be understood in the bigger picture by yourself. So keep that in mind when you're trying to manifest something that's not working. Well, you're not working in the right area. That's not for you. Try something else. It's not giving up. It's trying something else. So hopefully that's very clear, and we'll go more into manifesting and the different laws of manifesting as we talk about other areas. And as I've stated, you need to have channels. You got to have a way for something to come to you. If you don't have that, it's never going to manifest. Nobody's going to knock on your door and give you something. Even the old publisher clearinghouses, I'm not sure if they're still doing that or not, but they still brought you a check and had a knock on your door to give it to you. But that, you still had to enter the contest to do that. So the whole idea is that you don't enter the contest, you don't win. It's as simple as that. So you have to be active in the process, and you have to be something that's going to make your life better. It's as simple as that. Until next time.